Well, hello, folks, and welcome. Welcome to Just Folks Conversations with Emma. I'm back with another amazing guest, and this episode is really going to lift your spirits because you are about to meet a young lady who has a lot of worldly experiences behind her. And I mean that in the most positive way. She has been all over the globe, and she's a gifted and talented young person who actually gives us hope for the future. And that's really important because things can look kind of grim right now with the various situations around the world. People are fighting in various parts of the planet. We have concerns about the weather and the planet itself. You know, how are we going to survive all this plastic? But there's always a glimmer of hope. And that glimmer that we typically call the light at the end of the tunnel, this is one of those young lights I want you to meet. Welcome to Amber Gore. Hi, Amber.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure. I'm so glad you could join us today. Um, Before we actually get into just having our conversation, would you like to share a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So, my name is Amber Gore. I currently work as a program coordinator at North Hampton Community College for a government-funded student exchange program. The program recruits students from underserved and underrepresented areas to study in the U.S. So that's my current position.
And where's the school? Where are you located?
North Hampton Community College. So I live in Allentown, and the school I work at is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Very good. Okay.
So I have lived and taught in China, and I've lived in Korea for 4 years. And yes, I love travel. I love international education, international studies. I love meeting people from different countries. So yes, that's a bit about me.
Well, that's quite a bit. And so let's look into how you got to be this polished, this young in your life. Now, you started off as a child, like everyone does. What kinds of things were you interested in as a little girl?
So when I was younger, I did dance for a while. I was always interested in music and singing. And that's actually what brought me, I guess, to my passion, my interest in international education. When I was younger, I used to love listening to K-pop, which is Korean pop. And, I wanted to learn the dances. I wanted to learn a different language. And my college, thankfully, Bloomsburg University, University of Pennsylvania, offered courses in Chinese. So I was like, you know what? I want to take a language. I think Chinese is really interesting. It seems challenging. So I took courses, and then the opportunity came to study abroad. So I studied abroad in China. I loved it. And then once I graduated, I found my master's program. And they were like, you know what? We're going to send you to China again. You're going to do your thesis and you're going to teach English. So I went to China and I taught English. And while I was in China, I was visiting my friend in Korea, and I love Korea. That was it for me. I said, you know what? This is where I want to be. This is the place to be. So Korea, I was there for 4 years. And then I came back home, and honestly, I was kind of in a little bit of a slump because, I just came off of having steady work and teaching English, and it was consistent. And I knew that, each year I was going to have a position. So coming back, I was like, how am I going to find a job in international education? And thankfully, I found this position with North Hampton Community College, and it was still in education and international education. So I felt very lucky, very blessed to be able to have found that opportunity.
Well, it seems to me that the path that you've taken, in some ways, it almost seems like some things kind of fell in your lap. And on the other hand, it seems as though you did a lot of planning. Because when you think about Chinese and how very different the culture is and the language from what we're exposed to in the US,
Mhm.
how did those things happen for you?
Well, Chinese, again, like I wanted to do it because I felt that it would be a challenge. And I just honestly, I wanted to learn Japanese first, but they didn't offer it. So Chinese was the next best thing. But I feel when I was in college, when I was learning Chinese, just like I would have gone anywhere. It was just the opportunity that presented itself. So I just kind of took it, you know. I just wanted to travel basically. And since I was studying Chinese, I thought it was perfect. Like, oh, I'll just go. And it was a great experience.
Well, clearly, what I'd like to follow up on is when you learn a different language, you learn something about the psychology of the people. And so, we know how English is structured because we live in a culture that uses it. But what did that reveal to you as
Mhm.
you were learning Chinese? And of course, I get that it was challenging, but what beside the actual language, what other kind of knowledge did you gain from that?
Um, well, I learned, I don't know. I think the China has definitely a rich culture, and is rich in tradition, and a lot of Chinese traditions, like language, everything, also has influences in other cultures. So, like Korean and Japanese, of course, you can see some of the same characters in those languages as well. Um, but yeah, they are always adding new characters and words to the Chinese language. So there's so many, and a lot of them have different meanings, and especially considering the tones. So you could be so the word ma, for example, could either mean mother or horse. So it's a very complicated language. So that's definitely something that I learned. Um, and as far as the people go, I felt that they were very patient. I think that um, from my experience going there, people were very impressed if you knew Chinese, and they were very patient. I think that people are aware that it is challenging, especially for English speakers. Just like we're aware that English is very complicated for non-English speakers. Um, but yeah, that was pretty much my experience with the language.
Well, structurally, how is it different from English? I mean, we have
Structurally,
like noun verb agreement, a standard sentence. Is the
right.
order of how things are expressed different in Chinese?
It's actually kind of the same. So if you want to say, like, if in English you say my name is, in Chinese we'll tell Amber, like, my name Amber, but you kind of like omit the is. But it's pretty much the same structure. You say uh I like you. And then in Chinese, wo xiwan ni, I like you. It's the same structure. So you're adding, there's really no adding like a like past, like in Spanish, you might have to the verb changes according to if you're like past tense, or if you're speaking about present tense. In Chinese, it's not really like that.
So you're saying the people speak in the present tense and infer the time period? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much, like there's some article like particles that you can use in there, some words that you do add in, but for the most part, it's the same structure.
Okay. But it's all basically in present tense. So even if you're speaking
Yeah.
about something in the past, it's because you understand the content and the context.
Yes, like you don't conjugate like any verbs or anything like that.
Oh, okay. And all of these little symbols come together. And what I'm wondering, is there a direct correlation then, what you're saying is between English and Chinese? And once you understand the symbols, it's a pretty straight translation.
I would say yes. but Chinese doesn't have, so a lot of people may think that Chinese is like letters, but they're not letters. So each symbol represents a word. Um, so that's pretty much how Chinese is structured. When you're putting together a sentence, it's just each character will represent one word in that sentence. Yeah,
That's a lot of symbols to memorize.
it sure is.
So how did you organize your thinking?
Um, for me, because I was determined to learn, I definitely you have to study. And as far as like organizing your thinking, you kind of have to like throw away what you already know and kind of, okay, well, this is how things are. There's no alphabet, there's no putting words, letters to make words. And as far as making the symbols, you have to practice a lot. So pretty much every day when I was in college, I was writing the symbols like hundreds of times. So I could remember the order in which the strokes were written. It's very tedious, but in the end, uh, I think that as someone preparing to go to China, I felt that I was prepared by doing that, by continuing to memorize the different characters and the words and the meanings behind them.
Let's see, well, and you mentioned something about the order of the strokes. Does that mean that there's a particular method that you have to use in order to form the characters?
So technically, yes, you're supposed to do the strokes in a particular order. For me, sometimes it was easier. I just look at it and like, okay, well, that's the way it's supposed to look. But yes, there is a stroke pattern that you're supposed to follow, and it's usually right to left and kind of like top to bottom.
And using what instrument, an ink pen or a brush or something that, I'm accustomed to, television. It looks like everyone's using some sort of calligraphy pen. Is that?
Um, well, if was just practicing, or if I was just studying or something like that, you can just use a pen or a pencil. But if you want to do calligraphy, yeah, you would use the like the brush
Mhm.
and paint. So I did a calligraphy course, and we use paint. I know a lot of people use like ink, but we just used a brush and like black paint, and we just did it on some paper and yeah.
Okay. So you had mastered Chinese, and from there you went to Korea.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you?
I felt that Korea was an amazing place to be. I felt personally that there was a lot more, I don't want to say freedom, but there was a lot more flexibility. It's a lot more foreigner friendly. So in China, the way that the government is, access to information, just even getting on Facebook or certain websites, you couldn't do that because it was blocked by the government. In China, there were people who would take pictures of me. There were, without asking. And there were
What
people,
people? Wait a minute. Who's taking pictures? What do
oh,
you
just
mean?
random people would take pictures of me. So we'd be out and about, and there would be people with their camera just snapping photos.
And why do you think that was?
Probably because they've never seen someone who looks like me, or if they had seen someone who looks like me, it was very rare for them to see an individual who looked like me. So that's why I think they were taking photos, but it was a bit disturbing at times, especially when you just so happen to turn and someone's, you know, phone or camera is in your face,
No communication, just snapping away.
snapping away.
Okay.
Yeah. But I found that in Korea, there was none of that. Like I said, it's a lot more foreigner friendly. And because of Western influence, especially like on music, like K-pop and things like that, there are a lot of foreigners there. There are a lot of English teachers there. There are people who, a lot of tourists who are there. So I didn't come into any issues as far as people taking photos of me. People were like staring at me because they had never seen someone who looks like me. And of course, like those freedoms and access to information. There wasn't anything that I couldn't do. There weren't any like websites or, movies or anything that I couldn't watch. Um, so I just felt like Korea was just a better fit for me. And yeah, I loved Korea. I had a great time. Had a great time teaching. And also when I was in China, I had a class and each of my classes had about 50 students in it. So that was very
That's large.
daunting.
That's large. And
Yeah,
how do you manage 50 individuals and they're college age students?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Um, Honestly, I can't tell you how I did it because it was just, I knew it was something that I had to do. I'd never taught before going to China. So it's kind of one of those things where someone tells you like you have to do it. This is what's expected of you. This is part of your program. So you have to figure it out.
So were you
Um,
given a curriculum or did you have to create your own?
No, we were given a curriculum. We were supposed to teach from an English learning book. It had videos included. It had some conversational practice. But I did include in my class, just some assignments where the students would do group speeches where they would, practice their English. They would choose a topic and go to the front and do a bit of public speaking. We had an English corner where students could practice their English skills. Um, but yeah, so in total, I had about 500 students, and then in one class it was about 50. So it was a lot.
And you worked from what time to what time typically?
Oh, what time did I work? I worked until I think about five, like 8 to 5. But those classes were back to back,
So you had what, 4 or 5 classes a day?
pretty much. Yeah,
And how long was the class?
about an hour.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's very demanding.
it
That's very,
was.
how did your students receive instruction? What were they like?
So I taught at a media and communication school. So these are students whose parents had quite a bit of money. These were students who were coming from probably pretty wealthy backgrounds. So they, if they were interested in English, they were interested. If they weren't, they weren't. So I would say I had students who were excellent. So if they knew English, they knew it and they knew it well. If they didn't know English, they didn't know. Like there was no middle. It's either they were really great, really high level, or they just didn't know anything. And the students would, sleep in class, and I'd ask them where their assignments are. They weren't doing the assignments. They wouldn't come for their presentations. So that's kind of the stuff that I was dealing with those students.
How did that impact you, knowing that you had students who were really resistant?
Well, I took it a bit personal. I still, even with my students today, I do take things like that personal. I'm trying to work on it. But it upset me because I felt that I was working very hard. I was tired a lot of the time, and having to be in the classroom and having to, I want the class to be fun. I want the students to be engaged. So when I'm putting an effort and they're not, it disappointed me a lot. But I tried to get over it, focus on the students who were interested. And yeah, just make sure that the students who wanted to learn were able to learn and were supported and did the class successfully.
Okay, and that's interesting because there is a very prominent stereotype about Chinese learners and how they appear as students. The culturally that maybe that just applies here in this country, but what you're saying is that They're just people
Yeah.
like everyone else. You get a range of behaviors and attitudes and interests.
Mhm.
And I guess there was enough freedom there for them to be able to express themselves in terms of
Absolutely.
whether they really did want to commit or not.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to Korea.
Mhm.
So you were teaching in Korea as well.
Yes, I was teaching. So when I first arrived, I was teaching on an island called Jindo. So that was in the countryside. And then after 2 years, I moved to the next city up, which was called Mokpo.
And what was that experience like for you?
It was pretty much the same, honestly. So when I was in Jindo, I taught at two middle schools and one traditional music high school. And then when I was in Mokpo, I also taught at two middle schools. So when I was in the countryside, the students were, I mean, if the students didn't, again, find an interest in English or they felt like it wasn't something that they wanted to do, then they would act out. And mind you, these are younger students, these are middle school age. So they're in the class fidgeting, they're, acting out. Um, but I did feel in the countryside, the students were a lot more innocent. So, they they're just like goofy kids.
Mhm.
Um, and I felt there was a closeness in the countryside. It was more like a family because the students, like their parents had also gone to the middle school, and the teachers be like, I'll tell your mom, like, I know your mom wasn't like this when she was here, like that kind of thing. Um, so although those students, they would act up sometime. It was very innocent, and they were still very respectful. When I got to the other city, Mopo is more like the mainland. Those students were a little bit more wild. So if they were acting out, they were up and fighting each other, and it was all types of crazy. But again, the students who wanted to learn English, they learned English and they learned it well. But I think there were students who also really didn't feel like they had a future with English, and they just didn't think it was necessary.
Okay, well, kids are pretty straightforward about what they think is good for them and what they think is not. So that you really are never confused about their feelings. There you.
Absolutely.
What did you take away from that experience?
I think that the expectations and the stereotypes that I learned about Korea, especially like Asian countries in general, I think that I kind of, I saw for myself when I'm like, people are saying this, but this isn't exactly what it is. Again, I like to stress that people are individuals. And maybe, something could possibly be true about the majority, but it's not true for all. So I went in thinking that these students were going to listen to my every word and that, they were going to do exactly what I wanted them to do. And I was going to have a smooth class every day. But there were times I went home just so frustrated. And again, trying to learn how to not take things personally, and it's still something I'm working on. But that was a step toward when I was like, okay, Amber, um, you have to kind of take a step back and just realize that these students, like, why are they acting out? Why don't they want to learn English? Okay, because they don't feel like they have a future in it. So it makes me think, and kind of look deeper into the situations and think about, not think that, oh, they're doing something because of me. They're doing something because of, they have something else going on. So yeah, I think it just, taught me to try to think a bit more deeper about the students and learning and how education works, especially in Korea and in China.
Okay, was there any professional support for you? Any professional development while you were there, or were you pretty much left your own devices?
I did have a co-teacher. So when I was in Jindo, I had a co-teacher at each school. And then when I went to Mokpo, I had 3 co-teachers at one school and 2 co-teachers at the other school. So they were really helpful, and they were pretty much help me with everything. So even if I had to go to the hospital, they would help me with that. If I needed to get somewhere that was out of the way, they would help me do that. So they were really supportive. And they tried their best to wrangle the students. So we're both in there like, okay, we need to get this together. These students need to sit down and listen. But yeah, I really had a great time with my co-teachers. And this other teachers were supportive as well, but it was a little bit more difficult because they didn't speak English. So my co-teachers, they were the main ones who spoke fluent English. So they have to speak fluent English in order to teach English.
Right.
But the other teachers, oh, hello, that kind of thing, just kind of from a distance.
Right. Right. Well, that would be pretty challenging to most people, and yet you were able to thrive in that environment. What do you attribute that to?
Um, I think just personally that I do think I'm someone who's able to adapt to certain situations, even though I may be uncomfortable or I may be like, what in the world is going on? I do try my best to be positive and to have an open mind. Um, so when I got to Korea, I felt like, this is something that I want to do. This is something I'm excited about. And no one said there was never going to be any challenges. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be some kind of obstacle. But I think what really matters is how you overcome those obstacles. So I could either sit there and be upset and cry when things don't go my way, or I could try to make the best of a situation that I'm not 100% okay with. And that's what I found myself doing. Especially so I'm telling you about the teachers who were at my school. I I did feel a little upset because we couldn't communicate. So for a while, I went around thinking that they just didn't like me because they didn't really try to talk to me. But I figured out that it was because they didn't want to lose face. It's not that they didn't want to talk to me. They were embarrassed of their English ability.
Oh, and you were speaking Korean. Now, you have mastered 2 languages then, or 3, because English, I'm not
Yeah.
counting, but Chinese and Korean.
So I'm not necessarily a master. I knew how to get around. I knew how to communicate the things that I needed or things that I wanted. But I think they were, well, let me say, for the most part, with my co-teachers, we spoke in English. So I'm speaking English with my co-teachers. So I think they believe that I didn't speak any Korean at all. So when I was about to leave, they were asking me questions and I would respond in Korean. And they were like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea that you knew how to say this. But I'm like, yeah, I can speak some. I've been here. I know. But I was just, I'm sad it took that long for us to actually kind of somewhat talk to each other.
It's a process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. Do you think you'll go back to either country in the future?
I don't know if I'll go back to China, and that's no offense to China or the Chinese. um, I just don't really see myself going back unless an opportunity arises. Um, I do know. So I actually was promoted. So my promotion starts in July and it's recruitment and study abroad. So I may have an opportunity to go to China. If that's the case, then absolutely, I will be in China. But as for travel, probably not. For Korea, I still have friends who live there, and I really do want to go back just because I had such a great time. So whether it's recruitment or just for fun, I do think I probably go back to Korea.
Okay. Well, what did you like most about Korea? What made it so much fun for you?
I just love the culture, I love the community of it all. So, after Friday, on Friday, you get together with all your friends and then you go to like a restaurant and you eat samgyeopsal and you drink somek and you just talk about the week you had, and you're just up until the sun goes down and the sun comes back up. And it's just such a fun atmosphere and environment. That's what I like. I feel like people here, like we have our friends and we go out and do stuff. But I don't know, the energy in Korea is just different. And it doesn't matter what day of the week you go out, there's always people out, there's always something to do. There's always people to meet. It's just a really good time.
Did you find that the people you were with the most were basically your cohort in terms of age? Because we are fairly stratified in this country. Excuse me. You typically don't find a lot of intergenerational uh, activities. I mean, a family may do that, but typically that doesn't happen so much here. So, what was your experience like in Korea? And by the way, what was it you were eating and drinking? Because those
Oh,
words just flew by.
so samgyeopsal is like pork. So it's just like barbecue pork, like barbecue meat. And
Mhm.
then somek is soju. And then mekju is beer. So soju is Korean alcohol, and mekju, I don't know if I can talk about these things on podcast. I'm sorry, Emma. But but those are the things that, it's those are the things that we were doing. So we were eating barbecue, and then, just having a little drink on Friday after work, after a long day of work. Um, yeah, and I'm sorry, what was your question again? About
Um, in terms of your friends and people you hung with, were they basically the people that are within your cohort age wise, or was it intergenerational um, fraternizing?
No, though they were my friends were mostly from like in my age range. So actually I went to Korea on I applied to the EPIC program and was accepted, but because on my sorry.
What is that? The epic.
EPIC is English teachers, like it's an English program, don't ask me what EPIC means, but it's for English teachers who are going to Korea to teach.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was accepted into the program, but then on my application, they asked where you wanted to go, and I just put like send me anywhere. And then they did send me anywhere. So I ended up being kind of transferred to the Jeollanam-do language program. And the Jeollanam-do is the southernmost part of Korea. Hence why I was in Jindo, because that's the southernmost part of Korea. So most of my friends were also in Jeollanam-do in the southern part of Korea, that program. Um, yeah.
And were they Koreans or were they people who were just part of the program? So they were from other parts of the world, but they're all of you were together in Korea at the same time.
Yep, they were from all over the world.
Oh,
So it was like from England, there were some from Canada, different parts of the US, South Africa. They were literally from everywhere.
but primarily English speakers.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Um, now, Korea, with North Korea and South Korea being at odds to some extent, did you have any concerns about your safety? Did any of the political incident, well, there weren't really any incidences, but how is that addressed in everyday life? Because clearly there's some hostility between the North and the South.
When I was there, literally nobody talked about North Korea. I will say that South Korea is one of the safest places that I've ever been. Could go out 3 a.m. Like if my dog had to go to the bathroom, I could go out, nobody would bother me. I could walk the streets at night by myself. It was really safe. As far as the relations with North Korea, like I said, no one really talked about North Korea. It wasn't a threat. Like nobody went around like, oh my gosh, you have to do this because of North Korea. There was none of that. It was funny because I did see like articles and news from America where they were like, oh, North Korea, you know, we're scared. But there was nothing in South Korea. You would have no idea.
Hmm. That's really interesting because I guess the American perspective for those of us who don't get out of the country often is that the rest of the world is very, very dangerous. And, we don't really have the assurance that other places are, quote, as safe
Mhm.
as we are here, although being here is not necessarily so safe either.
Right.
Um, so I guess that particular stereotype is one that you can say, you know,
Yes.
not, not
I will
true.
say, from my experience being there, South Koreans are not worried about North Korea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there
Okay.
was none of that.
Well, that's good to hear. Um, so now let's move on a little further because we've talked about your experiences that have gotten you uh, from China to Korea, and so now you're back in the United States,
Yeah.
and you have this position. Would you share with us again what it is that you do?
Sure. So I work as a program coordinator for the Community College Initiative, also known as CCI program. It's a program sponsored by the Department of State, and it gives opportunities to students from underserved and underrepresented areas to study at community colleges throughout the U.S.
Okay, and those students come from where?
So historically, they come from places like India, Indonesia, Colombia, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, um, Egypt, Turkey. Um, yeah, they come from all over. Bangladesh. Yeah, they come from. I've had students from different places each year.
Okay, because when we say underserved,
Mhm.
typically we're thinking about American students uh, in the quote minority
Mhm.
who are pretty much urban based, but you were talking about around the world. So
Mhm.
you have all of these students, varying backgrounds,
Mhm.
and they are attending this school
Mhm.
through a program sponsored by the State Department.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is this a 4-year program, a 2-year program? What? How does it work?
It's a 1-year program.
Oh,
And
okay.
also, I should mention that the program is administered through Northern Virginia Community College, NOVA,
Okay. Okay. And yet you're in, are,
North Hampton Community College.
so two
So,
different institutions, but one of them is orchestrating it through the other.
yes. So, we're in partnership with the college, as are, I believe, 8 other schools.
Okay.
So, NOVA is the main school.
Okay. So how do these students find you? They're coming from around the world.
Mhm. So they can either apply, or sometimes what happens, their professors, they they are recruiting students as well, and they encourage them to apply, or they recommend a student for the program. So, and also through word of mouth. This program has been around since 2007. So when students come here and then they go back to their home countries, they're also telling other people about the program and, just about their experiences.
Mhm. So what do they get from their 1 year exposure?
So while they're here, it's a sponsored program. So again, they don't have to worry about anything like tuition, food. They receive a stipend. All that is taken care of. They take classes on our campus. So depending on what their program of study is, they take classes, and they can receive a specialized diploma if the course is available for 1 year. So if they only need the amount of credits to make it up in that 1 year, they can usually receive a specialized diploma. They also do volunteer work. They do internships. So it's an opportunity to network and meet different people in their fields. A lot of the students do want to return. So if they want to come back, that's really good because they already have connections in the US. And not just on our campus, they have connections at all these other colleges, and they have connections with the State Department. So usually those are the benefits, and that's what they get when they study with the CCI program. Um, so yeah, and they get to represent the program. We've had students do a recruitment for us. So our students who are like recently who were in Cote d'Ivoire, we sent them like t-shirts and some swag from our school, and they did recruitment for us. So they may not necessarily come on the CCI program, but they can come on a different type of visa or as just like a regular international student.
Okay, so what is specifically your job in terms of how you support them? What do you do?
Basically, yeah, supporting them 24/7. So I coordinate events for them, coordinate activities for them. I advise them academically, I advise them personally. Um, I have to make sure that they comply with the CCI guidelines and make sure that they are meeting their goals that they set at the beginning of the program. And just basically making sure that they don't die or that they don't get, really hurt while they're here,
Right.
and that they end the program successfully.
Okay, so what's the track record? How many students have you personally worked with? And then in terms of the program, since it's been around since 2007,
Mhm.
about how many students have gone through, if you have any idea?
Oh, wow. So each year we have up to 16 students. So I've done about 3 cohorts, but one of them, there weren't that many students because of COVID. So by some divine miracle, we were able to run the program during COVID. So I think I personally work with about 48
Okay.
students, 48, maybe, yeah, 47, 48 students. In total, I have no idea. Probably 150, maybe. Ooh,
Well,
it's
by now.
by now, yeah.
Yeah.
Because in 2007, I don't think they were sending those numbers
Mm,
to our school. I think it started off very small and with students from only one country.
mm,
And then as the years progressed, they started sending more.
I see. Well, you said you had just gotten a promotion, so what what's that mean for you?
So my promotion, I will no longer be the CCI coordinator starting in July. I will be the administrative liaison for study abroad. So that involves study abroad and recruitment.
So
Yes.
you'll be setting up programs for students who want to study abroad.
Yes.
They'll
Yes.
need to go through you. Okay,
Yes.
well, you seem to be meeting all of your career goals, which is moving you into more world travel.
Absolutely. And my goal from the start, like even when I was younger, it was always to have my own study abroad program.
Mhm.
So the amount of knowledge and just experience that I am getting, like I can't believe that I was able to actually continue doing the work that I wanted to do. I feel like for a lot of people that doesn't happen. They either end up somewhere completely different, whether it be because, money or just, the opportunity wasn't there. So I am just so excited that I get to continue working and, moving towards what I really want to do, which is my own study abroad program for students who are underserved in America, and taking them to other countries and exposing them to different cultures.
Well, the way things are going for you now is certainly something that I'm absolutely expecting you to achieve it. And there are a lot of young people who I think would absolutely benefit from the exposure uh, and having someone with your background and the very deep experiences that you've had would
Mhm.
certainly make you ideal, to lead a number of young people. And so that my comment at the beginning about you being one of the lights is absolutely true. You are demonstrating that in your everyday living.
Thank you
So
so much.
thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add or you could share about some things that you're doing?
The only one thing that I did want to add, and I have to mention this sometimes, is that when I'm speaking about different countries and cultures, I'm speaking from my perspective. So I just want your viewers to know that what I say is my experience. if they ever been to Korea or China, maybe they had a different experience, but it's my experience. And I guess I just also want to encourage people, if they've ever wanted to study abroad or if they've ever wanted to travel to a different country, that they should absolutely go for it. I Students that are at my college in Bethlehem, there are some who have never been out of Pennsylvania, and I feel like it's just incredibly sad that they have never had the opportunity, or they felt they didn't have the opportunity to go abroad. And again, I'm just so excited to start this new position. Because of COVID, it was halted. So now I feel that with me in this position, I can encourage those students to come on, let's go abroad. You've never done it, we'll work it out. You know, we'll try to find either a scholarship or work out some financial aid for you so that you can go abroad and that you can see the world. So yeah, that's
Okay.
all.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful. And as a follow-up, are you restricted to the students that you work with in terms of going abroad? Do they need to be residents of Pennsylvania or within a particular district, or are you available for folks in general?
This As we talk about bringing the study abroad program back, the students or individuals who want to study abroad, they need to be registered to the school. So usually our study abroad programs are connected with a course. So if someone, like say for example, Emma, if you wanted to go to a different country, if you wanted to come to Egypt with the students, you would need to register for the course. And then you would take the classes and then you would go with the students to Egypt. So you don't necessarily have to have, I mean, you would have to make that connection with the college, but if you found out about the opportunity, you would be able to go as long as you were registered. As far as other individuals, if you're an international student who wants to study abroad, that's something we would have to figure out in our office because of the visa, you know, regulations, if they would be able to study abroad and, you know, go out of the country.
I see. Well, in that case, how are you feeling about contact information being included? So folks who might have that kind of interest can get in touch with you. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we'll post that in the description. Um, and so at this point, I think we've had an amazing conversation. I am so excited. It's too bad I'm not a teenager because I would be signing up for a course to go somewhere, especially with the structure that you put in place. It looks like it would be a really wonderful experience. So I just want to thank you for your time and compliment you on the amazing life you are constructing for yourself, because it's very intentional. You've been setting goals and reaching them and setting new and higher goals. And they're not selfish goals. They include other folks. And that's what we need, folks who are in a real leadership mindset. And that's certainly you. So
Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Amber Gore. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
And be sure to say hi to your mom.
I will.
I met Amber when she was a baby. And she's grown up beautifully, I must say. So thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you, Emma.
All right. See you soon.
See you.
Bye-bye.